On a mission to eliminate racism, empower women, and promote peace, justice, freedom, and dignity for all. This is the YWCA Hour with your hosts, YWCA Executive Director Karen Bell Dancy and YWCA Associate Director Maisha Essex. Welcome in to the YWCA Hour.
Hey everyone, we're back with the W, Karen Bell Dancy and Maisha Essex. And again, we're excited that you're here with us, and we have some pretty good topics that we want to share with you today.
Yeah, so Karen will be talking a little bit more about one of the conferences that she is actually currently attending
Yes.
and had to step away from to do this podcast with us here today. But she'll be able to talk to you a little bit more in regards to how a lot of the decisions being made at the federal level, how they come down and impact us here at the state, city, and county level. And some of the programs where we have major support from the city and the county in regards to the juvenile justice prevention. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that. We'll talk a little bit, just a tiny bit, just really to acknowledge what's happening right now in Los Angeles in regards to immigration and some of the demonstrations we see going on really across the United States a little bit more. And then, you know, we are actually, are we in the middle of the year, Karen? We are.
Yeah.
June, in June. Okay. And I remember we started out talking about goals
Right.
throughout this year. And maybe we could check in at the end before we, you know, sign off and see how you all and we all are doing with some of the goals and the intentions we set at the beginning of the year.
Yeah. So as Maisha said, I've been involved in a conference most of this week, and that's called the JDI conference, what we call it here in the state. And that's the Juvenile Detention Alternative Initiative. And so this body governs all of the juvenile diversion programming across the state. We divide it up around counties. Now, to give you an idea of the funding stream, the funding is actual federal dollars that come through to the states. States are able to apply based on 4 different core initiatives for that federal funding. And so we know that the YW, we have a strong component of youth programming. And while we are heavily involved in our STEM programs and all of that, we want to make sure that all youth are successful. So we have different programs, which we'll talk about a little bit later, that identify with students that are pre-adjudicated and then some that may have already entered the system, but our goal is for them to not to go even deeper into the system. So back to the conference that I've been involved in. This morning, I was at the Grant the Funding workshop because as a nonprofit, we couldn't do this work without the money that comes from the feds and now through the states and then the county. So once the states apply for the funding, then that money is divided up into the counties. And so with Douglas County and Lancaster County being the 2 biggest counties in the state, typically get the largest share of the funding. And we have learned that before, some of the smaller counties, because the goal is to be fair across the state. Some of them apply for funds, but may not have enough staffing or other resources so they can continue to execute that programming. And so we go through a competitive process. So as a nonprofit, it's not always guaranteed that you will receive that funding. And so we put together programs that we think are really supporting of youth, helping them to make better decisions. And if they're already in the county, in that pipeline, helping them to now analyze, develop critical thinking skills and other kinds of goals and outcomes where they won't go further into the system. So the JDOT conference is an opportunity that we have every other year that we can come together as a group of professionals, talk about the programs that we offer, talk about the communities that we serve, and then, like I said, as of this morning, talk about the funding. So, as I mentioned before, the funding comes to the Fed from the federal government to the state to the county. So, we're part of a group of grants that becomes a package, if you will, from the county side. And so, with that, we're able to identify with areas for the grant itself. Um, it could be staffing, that direct staff that works with the programs. It could be helping us to take care of some of the expenses so we can house the staff. What are the costs for per participant? What does it take to give them incentives, get the materials, and all of that? So for a nonprofit, if we didn't have this stream of funding, then we could not execute those programs. And so,
Yeah.
as the state reminds us and did this morning in the grant workshop, is the idea is that they will not fund these programs forever. So that's why we always appeal to you, our office, to help us to augment these kind of programs, and so that they could remain sustainable.
Yeah, we know that, again, as you said, in regards to kind of the pipeline as to how we receive federal funding here, as a nonprofit or just in our community of Lincoln. And we also know that funding changes. You talked about the competitive process
Yeah.
across the counties.
Yeah.
And it changes. It's not a guaranteed number. And
Not at
so
all.
even
Yes.
if we have, programming that is funded at one level one fiscal year, it's not guaranteed that it would be funded
That's
at the same level the next fiscal year. And so
Right.
you're always trying to figure out how to identify with some of those holes. And when we think about, nonprofits, again, we're a nonprofit, right? We're doing this work.
Yeah.
We're doing this work for the community,
Yes.
and not charging for it.
Mhm.
And so we really do not have a consistent stream, of revenue
That's right.
for us to be to have the money generated on the inside for these programs within house, because again, we are a nonprofit. And so, as Karen was saying, that is why we want to make connections with you as the audience, with different community members who
Right.
believe in the mission that we have and are supportive in regards to time, talent, and treasure.
Yes.
And treasure is that monetary piece.
Yes.
And so, with federal funding, we know that it's in response to what they see as well, right?
Yes.
It's there are people on the national level whose job in different departments is to kind of keep the pulse of what's going on here,
That's right.
across the nation.
Yeah.
And across the nation, obviously, there has been feedback from all of the states that this is how we're struggling, and it's
Yeah.
consistent enough across the United States that you have departments, then you have funding
Right.
that's given. And throughout this time, especially with under this current administration, it's not as if those needs have disappeared,
Right.
but the funding for it is. And it's really, really detrimental to nonprofits who rely on this as a source for providing resources to the community, and quite frankly, helping to keep the programs alive, which also keeps the doors open
Right.
within a nonprofit, right? We
Yeah.
have to have programs that we are administering to the community.
Yeah.
And so it is so important when we are thinking about, as I talked about goals, and we talked about the beginning of the year, one thing we talked about was how can you make a change?
Right.
And we talked about, locally, what can you do?
Mhm.
And how can you show up locally, and how that will have a huge, huge impact on actually the federal. It'll have a bigger
Yes.
impact, on how you're living your day-to-day life as well.
Mhm.
When you engage locally, when you engage with the commissioners, right?
Right.
When you go out to vote during those elections where it's not considered a big election, right?
Mhm.
But they have huge impacts.
Exactly.
Right? Because we're electing people
do.
who are going to kind of facilitate and coordinate in regards to who gets what money and what funding. The
Right.
commissioners decide that.
Yes,
right?
they do. And
Yeah.
I'm so glad that you segue into that, Maisha, because a lot of folks don't really understand, what it really takes to operate that nonprofit and how we get this money. As I said before, it's such a competitive process. We have over 300 counties in Nebraska,
Mhm.
and all counties have equal opportunity to apply for this pool of funds.
Mhm.
So, depending on who is in Congress and who's representing us for our state, is how they petition for the funds to come into our state.
Mhm.
And so, when you think about as an individual, who's going to represent you? Who's going to be your elected official? Think about what are their core values when it comes to this kind of thing. We can't just have lost youth out here.
Mhm.
Youth detention is a very important part of our community, and we have to recognize that we have to fund that and we have to support that. If we don't support programming that will help these youth turn it around and not move further into the system, then we are not helping our community to get any better. So that's why we really appeal to those that have that real understanding of what it takes to operate these programs and how we can keep it going.
Yeah, youth development is really, really important, and it's needed across, as I said, national, federal government. They know that's why these programs and these departments and they were
Yes.
created in these funding streams. They were created because there was a need, and not just in Nebraska, but across the country, where we're seeing some
Exactly.
of our youth just kind of fall through the cracks and
Right.
not have the support and resources that they need. And us at YWCA, a lot of our youth development programs, they are funded, through this streaming
They are.
umbrella.
Mhm.
Uh, and so some of the programs, just as a reminder that we have in regards to youth development,
Yes.
we have a Girls Circle program, and that takes place within our middle schools.
Mhm.
And it's really a support group for girls who have already kind of been identified by the counselors, where they've had connections
Right.
or interactions and engagement with the legal system already, or we see
Mhm.
that they are kind of going down a path where they may have that interaction and engagement, right? So that's
Right.
absenteeism, right? That's being tardy to school.
Yes.
That's not being able to stay in the classroom during the full amount of time.
Office
So
referrals.
office referrals, all of
Yes.
those things where we
Yes.
want to make sure that we are intersecting
Right.
and making sure that we are kind of catching them at a pivotal point and helping them make better decisions, so that either A, they will not go back into the system, or that
Mhm.
they won't have to engage with it at all during this time.
Exactly.
And so we talk to our young girls about those really hard topics, right?
Right.
Really, really,
Yes.
because there is a reason why they are making decisions. And sometimes you have to allow them the space for them to come to the conclusion and understanding for why they're making those decisions. And again, like I said, we provide the space. It's not us telling them,
Right.
this is why you're doing this, this is why you're doing
Yes.
that. Because honestly, we don't know, because we don't know them until we get there.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
we're not going to make an assumption as to why they're behaving because the way that they are. Because if you do make that assumption as to why someone's behaving the way that they're behaving, you can create a plan based off an assumption that does not actually meet the need, because that was
Exactly.
never the problem.
Right.
And we do see that throughout the school day. And I get it, because you
Right.
don't, sometimes you do not have time to make these like really, really individual plans for every single person and try to get to the nuances of everybody. Because I mean, just the capacity and what time will allow. And again, the
Mhm.
capacity of there's only one counselor per whole grade. Like, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
You know how many children
Right.
that,
And saying that's one counselor for 300
yeah,
young people.
depending on, yes.
Sibling.
And of course
Yes.
we make, again, assumptions, and we create, the bias,
Mhm.
because we're just trying to create a shortcut to figure out how do we interact and engage.
Yeah.
But again, that's just not, while it can work for some, we know that it does not
Yes.
work for all, which is
Right.
why we have, youth falling through the cracks, because the traditional way of connecting is not working. And
Right.
so with that program, we allow them to just think. We ask these tough questions,
Yes.
to get them to kind of think about why They are, making the decisions that they're making. And then we teach them, give them some tools on how to make different decisions while feeling like they're still being heard. Because again, some of these, or not again, because I've said this, but some of these students, they have legitimate reasons to have concerns sometimes while in the classroom.
Yeah.
And while in the school structure.
Right.
And so it's not our place to come in and just say, oh, you a child, so you must not be telling the truth of how someone is engaging with you or how this school environment is making you feel.
Right. And one of the things I really like is the curriculum that we use. And that's one key element for JDI programs that are actually funded through this federal stream, is that they have to be evidence-based and or practice-based programming. Ours is an evidence-based program, so we know that it does work, and we have seen results from that particular program. And so with this curriculum, the girls are really developing critical thinking skills. They're able to analyze their own behavior. They're able to start really honing in on their identity and building self-esteem and some of those other tools that will help them to continue in their development.
Right. So we want the girls, again, because we're operating under, this JDI or JJPF funding stream and umbrella, is to make sure that we are connecting with those who have already had engagement with the law, or we feel like they are exhibiting behavior that will lead them to having engagement with the law or lead them to not be as active or present within the school system. Karen said that there are different requirements that you have to meet to even get the funding from the federal government. But then as a county,
some of those strategies too.
And as a county, we then figure out in city what are the goals that we need to identify to implement successful programming based on the needs of what's happening in this community, right? Because the communities around, or the different counties around Nebraska, they have different needs and different focus, right? Yeah. And so we need to make sure that we're responding to what's happening here. And so we look at all the data, right? We have a person that tracks and collects data from different organizations or sources like LPS, right? To tell us, who's being suspended more often, who's having connections with the SROs, how are the students feeling about the SROs. So we do analyze that data and then a plan, and Karen is a part of the strategic planning committee that makes a plan for 4 years? Did they expand this one?
We're moving into 5 years.
Yeah, this one, because it just 2025.
Yeah, but the current was 3 years.
The one before was 3 years, but they just released the plan that is now 5 years, you said, of how we're going to meet some of those goals to make sure that we are supporting the youth here in our community.
Supporting youth, building public safety, and just some real long-term positive effects on the community. That's what this is all about.
And so you said you'd share with us some of those.
Yeah, so some of the principles are safely reducing the number of youth in secure detention, reducing racial and ethnic disparities. These are some of the ones that we identify with: achieving systemic reform of juvenile justice practices, redirecting resources to more efficient and effective reform strategies, improving conditions in secure detention facilities, and developing appropriate and effective alternatives to secure detention. And we know here recently, even within Lancaster County, there were some issues around detention and, about safety in detention facilities. So those are some of the things that have been identified with. For us, with our programs, we really identify with the piece of how to help decrease the number of youth moving into detention and also reducing the ethnic and racial disparities. So that's pretty much where we are in identifying with the core strategies.
Yeah. And so it's I mean, you heard what Karen said. So these were, she was part of the group that created these goals. And so, thanks you, Karen, for representing YWCA at this conference, YWCA Lincoln at this conference. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about some of the sessions.
Okay. Sounds great.
Now's the best time to lock in early order savings on a new John Deere planter from Landmark Implement during the early order program. Plan for success with the latest technology, including Exact Emerge high-speed planters that help you cover more acres with greater precision and productivity. Order your planter for next year now to unlock the biggest savings of the season. Contact your local Landmark location today and experience the Landmark difference.
Take control of your health with the DASH scan at Advanced Medical Imaging. The DASH scan is a full-body MRI designed for advanced health screening. This dynamic approach provides exceptionally sharp images across multiple organ systems, helping to detect potential concerns early. With minimal radiation and no invasive procedures, the DASH scan offers a safe, comprehensive look at your health. Plus, results are delivered faster than ever, giving both patients and physicians confidence in screening and diagnosis. Your health is too important to wait. Schedule your DASH scan today at Advanced Medical Imaging. Visit amimaging.com or call 402-484-6677 to learn more.
Have you been injured in an accident and don't know where to turn? You need an attorney you can trust to handle your case with professionalism and compassion. The attorneys at Liberty Law Group understand that a call to an attorney is a call for help. If you've been injured, we want to help you. Liberty Law's experienced attorneys are committed to the pursuit of justice for those injured. Call Liberty Law Group and find out how we can help get you the compensation you deserve. Call 877-42-LIBERTY. 877-42-LIBERTY. Liberty Law Group. Trial attorneys you can trust.
Safety is always at the top of mind at Lincoln Electric System. The safety of our employees and the safety of our customers. It's National Safety Month. Visit les.com/safety for tips on all things related to electrical safety. If you're working in your yard, remember never to place landscaping, structures, and fences too close to above-ground electrical equipment. It's unsafe and could cost you financially. Visit les.com for a complete fence and landscaping installation guide.
Are you looking to upgrade or improve the garage door on your home? This is Cameron Hall of Doors Plus. At Doors Plus, we guarantee to offer a wide selection of options from 5 leading garage door manufacturers as we deliver a free estimate, exact measurements, and rapid installation with a 3 to 5 week time frame. When you choose Doors Plus for your residential garage door needs, you'll work with our experienced technicians and be ensured that your new door seamlessly complements your home. Give us a call at 402-590-5800 or visit us online at DoorsPlusLLC.com. Doors Plus, garage doors and more.
At Fairway Meat Market, you're family, and as part of the family, they want to save you money on your meat and groceries. Fairway has fresh cut meats, seafood, cheese, wine, and spirits, and a friendly staff that's always ready to help you find what you need. Stop by Fairway Meat Market today to plan your weekly meals in the Rockledge Square Shopping Center, just south of 84th and Van Dorn.
Rashawn Jackson here for Bauer Infrastructure, a veteran-owned local company proudly serving Lincoln, Lancaster County, and the surrounding areas. Bauer provides quality work at an affordable price, and they're growing rapidly. If you want to experience a career with a fast-paced, family-friendly environment, visit BauerInfrastructure.com. They have top-of-the-line benefits, year-round work, even through the winter. Bauer, usher in the new era of infrastructure to an area near you. And as always, go Big Red!
At Farm Bureau Financial Services, we strive to provide you with the right coverages for all your insurance needs by taking the time to meet with you and review what coverages best fit your needs. So whether you're in the market for home, auto, farm, business, life, or a combination of any of these coverages, we can help with making sure you, your family, or your business have the right coverage based on your individual needs. If you would like to review your insurance needs, please contact Ben Spurt with Farm Bureau Financial Services at 402-217-9945 or through email at ben.spurt@fbfs.com.
Ticket listeners know a dream team when they see one. At Applied Connective, we've been in the game for 20 years and have developed a team of world-class leaders in all things IT. From cybersecurity and Microsoft products to physical security, audio, video, infrastructure, business phone systems, and anything in between, we'll help you leverage technology to become your most secure, efficient, and profitable. Head to our website to check out real reviews and testimonials and sign up for a free tech consultation. We can show you where you might be vulnerable, inefficient, or overspending. It's a game changer, and it's totally free. Claim yours right now at appliedconnective.com.
Muchachos has been serving Lincoln delicious pork, brisket, and chicken tacos for several years now, as well as Hatch Mac nachos and more. Muchachos also brings you close to the taste buds of your favorite local college athletes with NIL deals like the B3 burrito for Bella Bacon of Nebraska softball and many more. See a variety of different NIL options at Muchachos at 11th and K or order online at yomuchacho.com. Open 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. Tuesday through Saturday.
Back to the YWCA Hour. Here are your hosts, Karen Bell Dancy and Maisha Essex.
Hey, so welcome back. We have been having a good discussion talking about the juvenile diversion, juvenile detention, alternative initiative conference that I've been involved in this week, which is a statewide conference that all the counties that have programs to identify with juvenile detention. And all of this falls up under the Juvenile Delinquency Prevention Act. So this is a federal act, and funding comes from the federal government and from the Office of JJDP, Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention. That funding comes into the states, into the counties, and we as the YW, we have several programs that come up under that umbrella. So in the state of Nebraska, we have not always had this strong of a program to identify with juvenile detention, but the state got together, commissioners, elected officials, and others working in youth reform realized that we needed to have a real strong foothold. And how do we reduce the number of students moving into detention, building diversion programs, but then also this helps to make a stronger community. So as Maisha and I, we talked about earlier this week, I've been involved with that state conference for most of this week. And another initiative that I was involved in, which was last year, and this was a repeat for what we did as a state, I want to say about 10 years ago. And that is Georgetown University. They have a program that's called the Advancing Racial Justice and Equity in Youth Legal Systems. It is a certificate program, and I was looking down so I can make sure I get it right. But we send a group, we apply as a county, and we send a group of individuals that represent our county to talk about and learn more about programs around the nation and developing some of the best practices around juvenile justice and building alternatives to the programs. So last year, I was part of the group that represented Lancaster County, as well as some of our, one of the judges out of juvenile court, our prosecutor from the youth division, and then some of the others around the juvenile justice around the county. And it was LPS was represented, also the Mediation Center, myself from the YW, our Assistant Chief of Police was also part of the group as well. So we had a real rounded representation, you know, so that we can come up with programs and bring these best practices back to our area and try to implement a program. And so our goal there was to talk about developing a program that once youth have aged out, you know, what's the next phase and how do we continue to track those youth and how do we continue to do some wraparound for them to help them to stay on the right path. So I want to say for Lancaster County, we are really identifying with this. And we put together a lot of grant applications to go to the state that's identifying with different parts of the youth need and what we can do around youth development so that we're going to decrease that number of youth in detention.
And Karen, didn't your group have to present a project at the end?
We did.
As a county or cohort from Nebraska.
Yes.
What was your project?
We did. And our project was looking at the number of students that are in detention. We really wanted to look at recidivism. And we wanted to make sure that recidivism is not happening at great numbers within our state. So our program was, what were some of the things we can do as alternatives? And not only that, what are some of the other resources that we need to identify with youth that are in the system? And as we found, it can be simple things around not having good cultural awareness or cultural representation when we have these professionals that touch the youth at different points along the system. Maybe they're not really closely identifying with this, and we need to do that. We also found that it would be so helpful if we built common language. You know, the language that we use and some of the terms that we use, perhaps at YW when we're dealing with youth, may not be the same as to what's happening at the school level. And you mentioned earlier about the SROs and all of that. So we need to find the commonalities and making sure that we're pushing those kind of efforts. And that if it is referrals that are happening, who is touching that youth along that point? How does that referral happen? So what we're trying to do is continue to press harder. We have a committee that's called the RED Committee. Mm-hmm. And RED is reducing the ethnic disparities. And we found that we have huge ethnic disparities of youth that move into the system. And that it is a direct connection of youth from certain races and ethnic background. They tend to move into the system more at a greater rate. Why is that? It's not just because it's those youth mm-hmm. that are committing these different assaults or whatever, what's happening like in that referral process.
And, you know, this just kind of takes me back to my training. Just commandeer. I took over our training. Okay. And made it mine.
That's okay.
We right. It takes me back to our training. And I believe one of the last conversations that we had at our past GARE training or the one before that, yes. We brought up disparities within the juvenile justice system in yes. regards to bias. Yes. And we talked about how whether it was a social worker or police officers or whoever yes. writing up the report, yes. depending on the race mm-hmm. or, like you said, the ethnic background yep. of the juvenile, it was written in a way that suggested a certain consequence or outcome for it, right? Right. We talked about how if it was, you know, written about a white youth, mm-hmm. it just read a little different, right? Yes. But we also talked about how kind of study was showing that if it was a white youth, what they believed was like community intervention was needed. They right. just, yes. you know, they just need some support. Mm-hmm. It was always what came out of that. They just need, you know, right. community support. Mm-hmm. When it came to kids of color, it was, this is who they are. So they need to be detained. Right. Like this is them and this is who they are. Yes. Same offense. Yes. It could be the same offense. Yes. And the outcome for how to address it mm-hmm. was totally different yes. based on race and ethnicity. Yes. And it was just based on bias. It was belief mm-hmm. that if they were white, they were just, you know, having a bad, you know, time, right. you know, it was just, right. they just need some community help. This is a part of adolescence, you know, it was just, it can be fixed with just some community right. love and help and, yes. and support. But with, you know, again, kids of color, it was like, this is who they are.
Right.
And they just need to be detained at this point.
Yes. and we also found, Maisha, that it's so key what you're bringing up, because we even had an instance where this actually did happen here in within our county, where depending on the background of the student, they just may be offered some kind of alternative there within the school.
Mm-hmm.
Other students may actually get that direct referral, and it goes right to the law enforcement.
Yeah.
And so we found it is that huge disparity,
because they
that
just need
does
some help.
really
Oh,
happen.
they
And
just need
some of the
community
students,
love.
they were offered the opportunity to view some videos,
Yeah.
participate in a webinar. And once they did that, then it was signed off. The student is okay. They can go back into the student body, go back into school. Other students were removed from the school, and they're out. They could be out for a week. They could be out for the remainder of the year. Those disparities actually happen. And so you're so right. And we have to, first of all, we have to admit
that does happen, and that we have bias within the system.
We have bias.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that was such a huge takeaway for me in that Georgetown setting was that simple things like not pronouncing a student's name correctly. All you have to do is ask the student. And it was some examples where there were attorneys, the guardian ad litem who represents the student wasn't even pronouncing the student's name right. So what's the likelihood of how that affects a student? It's so negative, and or everything that they see as soon as they hit the door, they see, I've got to go through this whole big bar system and checking my backpack and all those kinds of things, and or where students have to go sit with the SRO, which is on the other side of the door of the school. They're not even able to just enter without special passes, special permission. So we found that those kind of disparities happen, and those have a lasting effect on a student.
They do. We also find that when we're talking about how people move a little bit further into the system, youth versus other, we also talked about how study shows that youth of color, especially Black males and girls, are predicted to be older than what they actually are.
Yes.
And it was quite a big difference, right? So if we're talking about 5 years, if I see a person and I think they're 15 but they're actually 11 or 10, that's different, right?
Yes.
And I'll treat them like
adults.
Depending on their height and their body type, we'll treat you as an adult, right? We'll treat you as if your height, because you're a certain height, you should know better, even though you're 11. Like so
your frontal lobe is
it's still but that growth spurt did,
exactly.
so that's enough.
Yes.
And so we know that that's an issue too, right? Because you treat, again, if a 16-year-old maybe steals versus like I said, 11-year-old, that's a little bit different, right? Of how you approach that. And so when you just assume, when you see someone that they're older than what they are, how you engage with them is a little bit different as well.
Right.
And we know that humans are making these decisions.
Yeah.
And when it comes to when it comes to really anybody in the league, it's all humans, making the decisions. And if they have bias, then that is, that's seeping into the structure, into policy, into everything.
Self-fulfilling prophecy into how their interactions and their experiences with that young person. Yeah. And we have found too, with our the racial and ethnic disparities, that there are huge disparities when it comes to the punishment and the sentencing. And so we find that youth of color tend to it mimics the adult penal system. They tend to get more days. So either if it's more days out of school, more days in detention, and all those kind of negative punishments that they may not receive the offers to do some kind of alternative responses just like students that are not of color.
Yeah, you know, and into the, I don't want to say untrained eye, but uninformed eyes, and we know the back side of this, of what we're talking about now. But all that does is perpetuate a stereotype to the people who just maybe get the news articles or the spark notes, basically, of what's happening. They just see, well, more kids of color are in the system, or more, you know, it just, it again, it keeps that stereotype alive. And when we go back to like what stereotype, we can go all the way back to brutes, right? And that's just who, when they were trying to, you know, justify actions towards Black people, particularly Black men. You know, they characterize them as these aggressive brutes, right?
The Mandingo of
like it's brutes, and they're coming to get you and your kids and your wife, and we have to put these things, and how that to this day is still a stereotype that's perpetuated. And so now when you see a Black man, you just assume that, like I said, even with the young kids, and in the kind of suggestion as to what happens after them, or when they write reports, and when we, you know, make suggestions as to what should happen, to them as a consequence. And the whole thing about, you know, these one group of youth, Black youth, right? That this is just who they are. And so we have to just detain and put them in the system, because this is who they are. There is no rehabilitation here. This is them. They are brute. This is what they are. Right. Versus, like I said, the other children, or really white children, this is just a moment in time. They just need, like you said, the video. They just need to watch. We're good. We can go back into society. There is a way for us. There is a belonging in regards to society.
My rehabilitation is guaranteed. This was just
a moment. A youth thing.
And me just experiencing how I'm matriculating through my youth development.
Right. We just need a little help.
Not punishment for life. And you know, one of the things that we did as a county, our human services that puts together all the county grants for us, we did an outing as professionals, and we went to see the movie The Hate U Give. And so I encourage you, if you have not seen that or read that book, we even did a book discussion around it. We did a processing after the movie, and we talked about it. But it was that very thing, those implicit bias that those perhaps in law enforcement and other agencies and professionals that touch youth have these feelings in what they believe this youth, how they will react and their actions. And it's, you know, all something that needs to be severely punished, and without even understanding or knowing that individual. And so a lot of times with young people, you know, we know that when they sense that someone is reacting to them with fear, or not trying to really understand who they are or respecting them, then they pull back and they pull into it. And another point I want to bring up is, what are some of the other barriers and challenges for youth being successful in this? Sometimes we find that when it comes to escorting a youth and going to court, that maybe the parent can't get off work. Maybe they can't be there right then, you know. So now it looks like, oh, they don't have a good parental support, a good parental system. So that brings in some implications about how do they punish or sentence the youth. You know, it could be some other challenges, barriers like the transportation for family. And so there's a lot of things that we have to consider, and we talk about as a JDI collective. You know, how do we figure out some programming to help remove these challenges? So as you can see, this conversation has so many implications and things that we need to consider so that we get to the positive outcomes, not only for the youth, but for our community. Hey, stay with us. Come back.
Now's the best time to lock in early order savings on a new John Deere planter from Landmark Implement during the early order program. Plant for success with the latest technology, including Exact Emerge high-speed planters that help you cover more acres with greater precision and productivity. Order your planter for next year now to unlock the biggest savings of the season. Contact your local Landmark location today and experience the Landmark difference.
Take control of your health with the DASH scan at Advanced Medical Imaging. The DASH scan is a full-body MRI designed for advanced health screening. This dynamic approach provides exceptionally sharp images across multiple organ systems, helping to detect potential concerns early. With minimal radiation and no invasive procedures, the DASH scan offers a safe, comprehensive look at your health. Plus, results are delivered faster than ever, giving both patients and physicians confidence in screening and diagnosis. Your health is too important to wait. Schedule your DASH scan today at Advanced Medical Imaging. Visit amimaging.com or call 402-484-6677 to learn more.
Have you been injured in an accident and don't know where to turn? You need an attorney you can trust to handle your case with professionalism and compassion. The attorneys at Liberty Law Group understand that a call to an attorney is a call for help. If you've been injured, we want to help you. Liberty Law's experienced attorneys are committed to the pursuit of justice for those injured. Call Liberty Law Group and find out how we can help get you the compensation you deserve. Call 877-42-LIBERTY. 877-42-LIBERTY. Liberty Law Group. Trial attorneys you can trust.
Safety is always at the top of mind at Lincoln Electric System. The safety of our employees and the safety of our customers. It's National Safety Month. Visit les.com/safety for tips on all things related to electrical safety. If you're working in your yard, remember never to place landscaping structures and fences too close to above-ground electrical equipment. It's unsafe and could cost you financially. Visit les.com for a complete fence and landscaping installation guide.
Are you looking to upgrade or improve the garage door on your home? This is Cameron Hall of Doors Plus. At Doors Plus, we guarantee to offer a wide selection of options from 5 leading garage door manufacturers as we deliver a free estimate, exact measurements, and rapid installation with a 3 to 5 week time frame. When you choose Doors Plus for your residential garage door needs, you'll work with our experienced technicians and be ensured that your new door seamlessly complements your home. Give us a call at 402-590-5800 or visit us online at DoorsPlusLLC.com. Doors Plus, garage doors and more.
At Fairway Meat Market, you're family, and as part of the family, they want to save you money on your meat and groceries. Fairway has fresh cut meats, seafood, cheese, wine, and spirits, and a friendly staff that's always ready to help you find what you need. Stop by Fairway Meat Market today to plan your weekly meals in the Rockledge Square Shopping Center, just south of 84th and Van Dorn.
Rashawn Jackson here for Bauer Infrastructure, a veteran-owned local company proudly serving Lincoln, Lancaster County, and the surrounding areas. Bauer provides quality work at an affordable price, and they're growing rapidly. If you want to experience a career with a fast-paced, family-friendly environment, visit BauerInfrastructure.com. They have top-of-the-line benefits, year-round work, even through the winter. Bauer, usher in the new era of infrastructure to an area near you. And as always, go Big Red!
At Farm Bureau Financial Services, we strive to provide you with the right coverages for all your insurance needs by taking the time to meet with you and review what coverages best fit your needs. So whether you're in the market for home, auto, farm, business, life, or a combination of any of these coverages, we can help with making sure you, your family, or your business have the right coverage based on your individual needs. If you would like to review your insurance needs, please contact Ben Spurt with Farm Bureau Financial Services at 402-217-9945 or through email at ben.spurt@fbfs.com.
Ticket listeners know a dream team when they see one. At Applied Connective, we've been in the game for 20 years and have developed a team of world-class leaders in all things IT. From cybersecurity and Microsoft products to physical security, audio-video, infrastructure, business phone systems, and anything in between. We'll help you leverage technology to become your most secure, efficient, and profitable. Head to our website to check out real reviews and testimonials and sign up for a free tech consultation. We can show you where you might be vulnerable, inefficient, or overspending. It's a game changer, and it's totally free. Claim yours right now at appliedconnective.com.
Muchachos has been serving Lincoln delicious pork, brisket, and chicken tacos for several years now, as well as Hatch Mac, nachos, and more. Muchachos also brings you close to the taste buds of your favorite local college athletes with NIL deals like the B3 burrito for Bella Bacon of Nebraska softball and many more. See a variety of different NIL options at Muchachos at 11th and K, or order online at yomuchacho.com. Open 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. Tuesday through Saturday.
Back to the YWCA Hour. Here are your hosts, Karen Baldancy and Maisha Essex.
As you know, we were just talking about systems and bias, and where systems that are currently in place could be failing to protect and maybe meet the needs. We were just talking about how decisions at the federal level, how they can, how they're coming down and making impact in regards to the local level. And, with that being said, we definitely want to acknowledge what is happening across the United States, at this moment, really, what has culminated in Los Angeles due to, I believe, a lot of people's mindset and attitude to how this administration is currently handling certain issues. Right. And we see that a lot of people in regards to immigration, are being impacted on such a level that I think a lot of us cannot understand, who has had the, privilege of being born here, in this country. We do not understand, it's hard for us to understand. And sometimes it's hard for us to even engage in a way that we can be, extremely empathetic, because you may not know the feeling, right? But we do know that there are a lot of people, again, that are being impacted by these raids that are being carried out here in our own state. Families are being impacted heavily by this. We do see that they may not be following the due process, because we know that immigrants have rights here too, right? And so some of the due process is being bypassed, in order to, it seems that some of the due process is being bypassed in order to fulfill an agenda, to meet a number, to meet a quote.
I think that's really what happened in California. Due process was not followed. In many ways, not even just. And so, a couple of things I would like to touch on is that we all have that responsibility to become more knowledgeable about due process. We all have that responsibility for humankind. And I just feel that humanity is just being threatened in our country right now. And we have to get back to that. No one, I'm saying no one, but I can really only speak for Karen. I would not want anyone that is just committing crimes, doing nefarious acts, to just go free and to just run free and rampant around our country.
Absolutely.
However, we all are supposed to have equal rights. That's why we have amendments. That's why we have a constitution. And I feel when someone is circumventing the Constitution, that they need to be held accountable. And we have a process in place for that. And, I just think so much about like the clientele we serve, especially the youth that we serve, families being impacted because of the fear. And when we instill fear at this level, in our local communities, we all are affected. And we cannot become a system of us and them. That is just, to me, it's just so insane.
And if you
have that possibility.
And if you think you're not affected by what's happening in Los Angeles and by the demonstration of authority and power that we saw in Los Angeles, please think again, because this was carried out on those who were just demonstrating.
Right.
That is their right. It is our right for peaceful protest.
Exactly.
And when I said, due process in regards to many different areas, this was one of them. Certain actions did not need to have to be taken on people who were protesting legally, peaceful protesting, demonstrating.
Right.
There are always agitators. We know that. Like when you have a protest, there are always agitators.
Exactly.
But it is the responsibility of that community and that local law enforcement to have a plan for when there are agitators.
Yes.
And I think we need to allow them to carry out their plan for making sure that everybody is safe while exercising their constitutional right to protest and to demonstrate. And that affects everybody because this is not the only issue, right? Think about an issue that's really important to you. And if you decide that you want to conduct a peaceful protest and demonstration, but because it does not align with the views of those in power, that you may have military presence, the Marines, the National Guard called out.
And that's not, when I think about it, Maisha, that's not what the Marines were supposed to do.
No, that's not in their purview.
It makes us not really embrace and, have that respect for our military. And, and I think about all the times I've been to Capitol Hill and been involved in meetings, in Senate and at Congress and, Capitol Police, they were trying to do their job. I've been in the Durkins building and they had the dogs come through and I was knocked down and hurt my foot, but they were doing what they were supposed to do. So, my reaction was not to get up and do something that would be breaking the law. I just needed to get out of there, but what we were doing, we were just trying to have meetings that were scheduled with our senators. And so, again, back to what you were saying about we all have that right. And my position being there was to represent the voice of those within my community that could not have those direct meetings with our senators and with our lawmakers and all of that. So we just wanted to press upon the fact that, we understand the need for protest. We understand the need for demonstration. We want to amplify our voices and lift up that voice for others, that there are some laws that are currently in place, some proposed laws, proposed bills that tend to divide our country, to divide people, trying to create a have and a have not system. And we just don't believe in that it's not fair.
I mean, one of the with the budget that's currently being proposed, speaking of, and I'm segueing into this because we're talking about most of the conversation we had today was about youth, and the bill that's currently being proposed for budget, it cuts funding to CLCs, federal dollars to CLCs. We here in our community, we know how important community learning centers are. We know that between like the hours of 3 and 6, one of the most dangerous times for young children, because a lot of times you have parents who are at work, so now you're unsupervised, you're not engaged, and so we know how important it is to continue to engage our students during those hours. And so that falls within, here in our community with the community learning centers. And so like money is being, the budget that's being proposed is to cut federal dollars again for our youth.
And then where do we get that money if we wanted to keep that programming in place?
That's very,
so that's, we just wanted to lift that up.
Yeah. And the last thing that I wanted before we leave is to say, pay attention to what's happening out in LA. It is a precursor. It is setting a precedent in this country in regards to how you use your voice and when you can use your voice and what you can use your voice on.
Please,
but pay attention.
And your vote. But pay attention because right now it seems that it is being stopped and stumped on. And
and the military is being utilized as the force.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's what it is looking like.
Yes. So thanks again. If you have any responses, your thoughts, we really want to hear those. Write in, call in. We really want to hear what you have to say and making sure that all voices are heard. And we will stay in solidarity. And again, Karen Beldancy, Maisha Essex, this is the W.